Hey, thank you so much for joining us on the Untrained Philosophical Discussionist podcast. We continue our series today on fatherhood, and today's episode is about the stages of fatherhood.
Man, today we had such a great conversation as we broke down what it's like to be a father when kids are between the ages of a baby and 18 months, from 18 months to 3, from 5 to 12, from 12 to 18, and specifically what our role as a dad is all throughout those stages.
This was such a fun podcast, guys. Please stick around. You're really going to enjoy this.
Welcome to the UPD podcast,
Designed to point men towards Jesus.
real life, real talk. Join us. I'm Andy Lamb.
I'm Jonny Hanson.
This is the UPD podcast.
But lost my headphones again. Hey, buddy.
Good morning, man.
How the heck are you?
Man, I am on like day 12.
Of what?
This like chest cold crap, man.
Oh,
12
yeah.
freaking days of this, man.
Yikes.
Never like laying in bed like sick, but just you can even hear it in my voice right now, man. It's been like this chest. I lost my voice for 3 or 4 days. Wasn't great.
No.
It's hard to do sales when you can't talk.
Do you take Flonase? You ever heard of that stuff?
I have heard of that stuff, but no, I try not to take like a ton of medicine.
Sure.
You know, I've just been loading my body with vitamin D and C and B12 and, all the good stuff, just trying to let my body naturally do it. But
I feel like
gone.
I don't like to take a lot of stuff either. However, if things linger too long, what'd you say, Doc? Yeah. All right, let's do that.
Go get an antibiotic and
Something.
get going with it.
It just drives me too crazy. I get too anxious over it.
I felt like it was going to my ear
Oh,
the other day,
no.
and I was like, "That's
Okay.
okay. If it's into my ear, I'm out
Straight to the ER.
immediately. I don't like walking around talking with an echo. That's just
Oh, gosh. I blew out my eardrum on a flight twice now. I guess once you do it once, it becomes more possible to happen.
interesting.
It's real bad.
Painful?
Well, yes. Super painful.
Yeah.
And it takes a couple of days for it to heal back up. It will heal up. You get a little pinhole.
I perforated my eardrum one time.
Ah.
We were on a rope swing, and I was like trying to do a flip, and I landed
Hit
in the
the
water.
water.
And it felt like I had water in my ear. And so Pastor Rick, who was with me, goes, pour a little alcohol in there to
Yes.
get the water out.
Sure.
I had a perforated eardrum, and I poured alcohol into
Yeah,
it. I
burns.
wanted to kill everybody.
Burns.
Immediately.
Yeah.
It was not water in there.
Now,
Excruciating.
hey, guys, geez.
Oh, welcome to our conversation.
Hi, thanks. We are the Untrained Philosophical Discussionist. My name's Jonny Hanson.
My name's Andy Lamb. We call ourselves UPD. We are two dudes. We are untrained dudes, but we take about the 100 years of life experience we have between the two of us, and we like to apply it to different topics using the Bible, using our life experience, and our hopes that we can just be a tool to help disciple people to be closer followers with Jesus.
Yeah, we thank you so much for joining us. You can reach us at a bunch of different ways. We have social media now, so we are on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube and
Facebook, all of them.
Facebook. That's right. I do see it on Facebook too. And then you can also reach us if you have something where it's maybe something you don't want to share with the world. You just want to get it directly to us. You can reach us at updpodcast@gmail.com.
That's it, man. If you like the content, we just ask that you subscribe to it. Share it with somebody else. If you know somebody who's struggling with topic we're going to be looking at today is fatherhood, maybe marriage, maybe finances. This is hopefully this is something that they can listen and glean some information from, and follow us week to week. We put out content on every single Thursday with our full length podcasts throughout the week. We break out some proverbs, and so hopefully you can find something that you can find that'd be encouraging for you.
For sure. And today we are partnering once again with our good friends at
Commission 127.
Commission 127.
Website is c127.org. You want to read that?
Yeah, they sent us a kind of a bio here that lets you know a little bit of the background and why you might want to support it. Both of our families do support it actively, so this is something that's close to our hearts. It's run by Betsy and Rashad. They've been married for over 20 years. They were called to foster from from hard places in 2013. Since then, they have grown their family to 6 kids, 2 grandbabies, and 1 son-in-law. They experienced an overwhelming child welfare system, isolation, neglect, and the unpreparedness of families called to care for kids from hard places. They had a front row seat on why 50% of foster families quit after the first placement. They used to believe that every believer should either foster or adopt because the book of James admonishes us on what true religion is to care for orphans. They soon realized that they are not all called to foster or adopt, but we are all called to care. However, there was never a simple way for everyone to care. Until one day they discovered a model that helped churches and their people care for kids from hard places. By bringing 1 meal a month, bringing a tired foster mom a coffee, or leading a family advocacy ministry at your church, you can help 90% of families foster 2 to 3 times longer. How is God calling you? Discover how to care at c127.org. Again, that is C as in Charlie, 127.org.
Yeah, they are an incredible couple that have really given their lives away to this organization that they have built where, as they just read there, they help either place kids into foster care, but the more important thing they do is help support foster care families. Interesting statistic, that they read there that 50% of people who do foster 1 kid and then they quit because it's hard. It's hard. I think my wife and I have talked about that in the past, and I said the tough part about fostering is you great feelings for this child that that you're probably going to have to send back into not the best circumstances.
Potentially.
Yeah, and it's hard to not grow attached to that child where they are in a loving and caring home, and then you have to go shove them back into a poor situation. And so I can see why families do it once and then back out again. But the fact that they're able to take these families and then 90% of them, have 2 and 3 kids after that, that's incredible numbers of what they're doing. And so,
right. It just shows once again that community, which we're always preaching here from this pulpit, is everything. It's who are you surrounding yourself with? And then on this end of it, it's saying, how can I be a surrounding person to someone that needs that help?
Yeah.
And where can I pitch in? And it sounds like very simple ways. I mean, we donate financially,
right,
but that's not the only thing they have there. So please reach out to the organization, look into what you can potentially do to be helpful and support them.
Yeah, I love every bit of what they're doing.
Yeah, they're fantastic. And the gear's awesome.
And the gear's amazing.
Come on. This is good stuff. It fits well. Look at the sleeves fit right as they should. I love their gear.
Hats.
The hats are great.
Their Defender hats pretty dang fantastic. So
Yeah.
I'll take it. Man.
So we like them. So today we are talking about fatherhood. We always start our show with a proverb. Today's proverb is 22:6.
Yeah.
You want to read that one?
I do. And the proverb that we read, we always try to tie into what the topic of the day is. So this is Proverbs 22:6. It says, "Train up a child in the way he should go, and even when he is old, he will not depart from it." I want to just... Whenever you read the Bible, it uses masculine language. So it says, train up a child in the way he should go. But today's language, we would say, train up a child in the way they should go. They, meaning he or she, they. Even when they are old, they will not depart from it. We talked about this last week. When we read a proverb like this, it's very easy to read this and go, okay, if I just train up my child to be a follower of Jesus, that when they're old, they will not depart from it. It's not a promise, it's a truism, right? We talked about that last week. So there's no guarantees, but the chances are that if this is the way that you train your child, then the most likely opportunity that they will turn out to be a follower of Christ when they're older is if I train them when they're younger to do it.
I'm so glad you brought that up. Who wrote this proverb?
Solomon wrote.
Who's Solomon? He's the son of
King David.
Is he the only son of King David?
No, he is not the only son of King David.
Oh boy, was he the oldest?
He was not the oldest son of King David.
That's because he had some older brothers. He had some older brothers. Boy, this I wrote down because I thought this was so darn interesting because it shows this contrast that you're talking about. He had 2 older brothers, for sure he had more than that, but he had 2. He had an older sister as well. He had Absalom and Amnon. And Absalom, not a good guy. He did something he had involuntary husbandry with his half-sister.
Mm-hmm.
And Amnon was not happy that his dad didn't take out full vengeance on Absalom.
Mm-hmm.
So then he took it out himself and he murdered him.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the oldest brother, was Absalom. He was murdered by his younger brother, Amnon.
Mm-hmm.
So neither one of those kids were trained up in the right ways by David.
Right.
I guess as David became an older dad, he became a better dad, maybe.
It's interesting.
We don't know,
If you
but
go
I can
through,
speculate.
if you go through the book of Kings,
Yeah.
where you have the lineage of David,
Yeah.
and you read through all these kings, it was like this king followed the Lord, and then this king did evil on the eyes of the Lord,
Bingo.
and then this king followed the Lord, and then several kings did not follow the Lord. So we can look at the transition of David from king to king.
Sure. Even in David's kingship, he gets booted out by Amnon later on, who then gets killed himself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how you end up getting King Solomon, is because through this consecutive chain, there's just a lot of death.
Yeah.
And it's because of this disobedience.
And it all started with David. You know, David was
disobedient
yeah.
too. Who was Solomon's mom?
Right. But
All right, so this is this imperfect. That's why the Bible's so great. Is not because it shows you a trail of perfect people who you're supposed to mimic. It shows you a trail of imperfect people and then one perfect individual who did it right.
that's right.
And it goes, hey, we're welcoming all here because everyone's imperfect minus Christ.
That's right.
So that's why it's such a great tool to utilize and use in your own life, is because you are going to fall short.
Yeah. I think you said that well. The Bible is full of broken people.
Bingo.
And God uses broken people to show us that broken people can still become followers of the one perfect person, and that he can still use imperfect people to help disciple and lead others to Christ.
Bingo.
It's a beautiful, beautiful thing that he did.
That's what's being said here. Train up your child in the ways he should go. Even when he is old, he will not depart from it.
Mm-hmm.
This is Solomon. Solomon's not the first kid. His brothers did badly, and maybe that's because they weren't trained up properly. And Solomon is trying to reflect that.
Or maybe they were trained up properly.
And they chose a different path.
That's
Rebellion
exactly right.
is certainly part of it, and we will talk about that in the next
Next week.
episode. In the case of, this is, Solomon is credited in the Bible as being one of the smartest people of all time.
Mm-hmm.
God gave him that wisdom. And he's saying, boy, if he's setting out this ideal path, that if you do spend the time to train up your kids well, they will follow the path all the days of their life. They might deviate it from time to time on the path, because we all are we all have sin in our hearts, and we all want to walk off the path and kind of test the other bounds. Grass is always greener.
Right.
But even when we go astray, when we've been taught who Christ is and the way that he loves and the way that he forgives and the way that he's always seeking that one from the 99, leaving the 99 behind and try to grab that one,
Mm-hmm.
we know that that's who he is. We always know that that's a safe landing place. So even when we've deviated from the correct path, we can look right back towards Christ, and he's right there going, come on back, buddy. Love you. Get on over here.
Ain't that the truth, man? I think that's such the beautiful picture of the cross, is no matter how many times I wander, he's always still there.
And you know that because somebody gave that to you.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that because somebody gave that to me. It didn't happen to be my father, but it happened to be some men in my life along the path that shepherded me the correct way.
Yeah.
And I'll carry that all the rest of my life.
And you feel it too. Like every time, you wander, it's like even a relationship with your own father. Like when I do wrong and I come home and I see that look of disappointment, I know that there's going to be some discipline coming with it that I don't like.
Sure.
But on the backside of it, if a father is disciplining correctly, which we'll get into here in a little bit, there is that restoration part that you feel where your heart just feels still connected
Absolutely.
to a father. And Jesus does the same thing for us, or God the Father does the same thing for us. Was in this world, when we mess up, all he's asking for us to do is come back in a mode of repentance and be like, God, I messed up. Even though I'm forgiven once and for all, I still live on a short leash with God of where I want to be. I want to be focused on these bad decisions that I'm making so that I can make better decisions going forward.
Well, yeah, you're saying in that moment, I identify what I did. My intentions now are to change. And God is very intention driven. That's what he wants to see from us, is our intentions consistently. Because again, you're always going to fall short of perfection.
Mm-hmm.
But it's when you go to God and you say, oh, here's what I did. I recognize it. And it's a humbling effort too, because, you almost don't want to sometimes. You kind of like,
Why?
you already know what I did.
Why do you think you don't want to?
Well, because you have a sinful little heart.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that we're inclined towards that, and because we're ashamed.
Yeah. I think,
Shame's a big thing.
Mhm.
And then you don't want to you'll get broken all the way down too. It's like you're so proud. We talk about that. Pride is like the ultimate sin that we have. It's the root of all sin.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what it is. It's like this, I'm too proud to just say I screwed up again. Because it can be again. It can be, this is the 50th time today.
And that can be, it will be.
Well, sure. There you
Right?
go. So then you're like, again. You're Bill Murray in Groundhog's Day,
Right.
waking up every day to the same stuff. And you're going like, am I ever going to learn this? And
Yeah.
that's really the case. Is like, once you can start doing that, am I ever going to learn this?
But what you just said right there, it's the battle. That's how I know I have Jesus, is because it's the battle. If I wasn't battling, if I was just like, well, I guess this is who I am, and I just stay stuck in that, then I'm like, you might need to have a moment where you meet King Jesus.
Great point.
Because it's not about perfection. It's about that faithfulness.
Yeah, that's
That's all we're called to, is just live faithful lives. And we're going to battle until the day we die with our lustful hearts and our prideful hearts. And every day I'm going to wake up and know I'm going to do battle today, I'm going to do battle today.
And there's honor in that. There's this honor of being able to put on the full armor of Christ and to step out into the world, which is what it is, and walk a different path that is counterculture, and hang your head high and say, but I have hope in eternity with Christ. Yeah. And there's like a lot of honor in that, and it feels good knowing that you're doing that. And actually, as men, we're kind of like, and I'm just speaking, we always speak for men because we're two men. You can hang your head high on that. You can feel like proud because it's a righteous proud. Mm-hmm. It's the proud of, I'm representing God today, and I'm going to try my darndest to do it, and I'm probably going to fall short, and that's how that's going to be. But my intentions are true, and my heart is true today.
Yeah, it's that sacred honor we've talked about before. It is a sacred honor that I do get a battle, that I do get to wrestle with this. And I was at this restaurant the other day, and a waitress walks by and watch this group of like 80-year-old men just turn and watch her and follow her butt as she's walking by, and I'm like,
it never gets too old.
It never gets too old, man. I mean, it's just, I think that's just, if we're just honest with ourselves, there's just even in going to wrestle with that, right?
We're visual. It's going to happen forever. Good luck. Yeah. You're going to fight. Guys, come on. We're not, see, that's the thing, is like, I'm not going to sit here and pretend to be holier than thou. Bro, same thing. Always. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then again, it's, you see it. Okay. I seen it. It's what you do afterwards that's the problem.
Yeah.
You're going to see it. We live in a world that is specifically now is very sexualized.
Very provocative. So everywhere you go.
It's going to happen. You're going to be confronted with this, and you can't live in a hole if you want to be in society. So here you are. You're going to have to find a way to fortify yourself daily to say, well, I choose my wife. I choose my spouse. I choose God. I choose this path that he has me on. Mm-hmm. And these things are going to come up, and you're going to go, whoop, there it is. And then that's the click in your head. I'm still choosing this path.
Mm-hmm. That's a good way of looking at it. It's knowing going into it how I have to train my mind in such a way so that when it happens, I have an automatic response to it. If I don't train my mind for that automatic response, then every time it comes up, I'm going to...
And you can pray. You can say, hey, God, look at me. I'm still struggling with this. Give me the strength next time.
Mm-hmm. That's it, man.
Yeah.
And you may find for a season of life that you're
going to be looking. You're the old man looking. Oh,
and there may be a season of life where you see, and it doesn't even faze you any longer. Maybe you have some victory over that.
Absolutely, that's going to happen.
That's the prayer.
Ebb and flow is life.
Yeah,
and it's hard. That was the last whole series was hard, and like this is part of it. Life is hard.
Life is hard.
So today's episode is fatherhood. Today the subsection is stages of fatherhood. This is episode 39. 39 episodes?
That's crazy, man.
Oh boy.
We're moving along. When we started this, we said 52 episodes.
Right? Is that what we said?
Well, we said 1 year. We'll do
that's right. Okay.
1 year. We'll
1 year,
every week
one
for
a week.
1 week, and we'll see what happens. And at the end of that year, we'll reassess. And if we find like we have traction, then we'll keep going. And if not,
we're going to do more than a year.
We're going to do more than a year for sure.
Teaser. Way more than a year.
Sure.
Let's define a father. We said it last week. I'm going to repeat myself. This was my invention. A father is the man in a child's life that brings love, security, discipline, and vision for the child to help them maximize their potential. And then in parenthesis, I wrote, come to me, I will listen, I will respond.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the God piece of it. We are a representative of Christ here on earth for this young little child, I think.
Yeah, we are.
And we're shepherding this kid to be who we want them to be and who God wants them to be. And we're trying to, in that, that's what God says to us all the time. Come to me. I will listen and I will respond, because God always responds too in one way or another.
He does.
No prayer goes unanswered. Your wish in your heart might not get answered, but your prayers always get answered.
And in his timing too. Like his timing and our
That's the
timing
whole
are very
point.
different. As I contemplated what you wrote there over the week, the one word that kept coming back to my brain was this word vision.
Yes.
And it's really, I think that is our primary role as the fathers, casting vision.
My wife actually came up with that one. She goes, it's the vision of the household.
Yeah.
Thank you, honey.
Isn't it great when they can just so quickly give you, like, you have this great big idea and in one sentence she can encapsulate your big idea.
I sat over this stuff, writing all my note cards for like 3 hours that afternoon. And I go, all right, I think I got something good. And then she just says one word and I go, well, that encompasses everything. Thank you.
Thank you. But I think today, as we look at stages of, as we look at our kids when they're smaller to their teenagers to they're grown, I think vision still is the overarching piece of all that. But it's how do I cast vision at each of those stages of life that we want to look at today?
Well, and let's make this super clear too. Allow that you're not going to be perfect. Bingo. So just settle that in your little baby hearts. You're not going to be perfect, but allow that to motivate you. When you recognize where you're coming up short, engage then. Okay. It's been it's been like 4 days since I've really spent time with my kid. Today, when I get home, I'm spending my time with my kid.
Mm-hmm. And spending your time it's all about just being engaged with them while you're there, having conversation,
of course,
hearing what they're saying. It doesn't have to be, maybe it is going outside and throwing the ball around for a while. Whatever you need to do to engage them where they are at, because every kid's different.
Each category of growth through childhood is I wrote them all down here. I found the Cleveland Clinic put out a great
Please read that. They're a great organization. So
they kind of define these different categories of childhood, and it's birth to 18 months, 18 months to 3 years, 3 to 5 years, 5 to 12 years, and then 12 to 18. That's the way they break it down. I have a lot of discussion in between those.
Cool.
But I'm hoping before that to say a couple of things, because ladies, you get to be involved here too, obviously, right? And men, I want to say this about the ladies in your life. If you're about to be a father, this woman is producing another human inside of her. This is one of the most amazing things that happens in this entire universe. You go from one person to two people. And this little creature inside of her is literally absorbing her nutrients and absorbing her hormones and absorbing her energy as it develops inside of her and gets bigger. And throughout that process, it throws off her hormones. And as Christians, we believe that from conception, a child is there. We're not going to pussyfoot around this thing at all. We're just going to be very specific. From conception, there's a baby. Now, what you choose to do with that baby, I guess, is up to you. We'd prefer you always have these babies.
Mm-hmm.
But we'd rather make arguments about why we think that than anything else, than laws and rules. We actually think arguments are the best way to change hearts and minds. Yeah.
Laws are not the best way to change the hearts of people.
We don't think that. So she's going to be crabby sometimes. She's going to be tired sometimes. She's going to be short-tempered. Sometimes she'll be super happy. And then sometimes she's going to be fearful or tearful, for that matter, because of those hormones that are being affected by another human growing inside of her body. And even when it's outside of the body, it still feeds off her body for quite some time. So we as men, what can we do? Well, we can anticipate her needs. How do we do that? Well, we explained that multiple episodes ago in Finding a Partner, and it's become a student of your wife.
Mm-hmm.
What are her likes? What are her dislikes? The more you learn about her and the more you know about her, and this is going to take effort by you, and this is going to take patience, and you can't take things personally. I'm just setting out some guidelines that are going to help make your life easier. Again, I said already, you're going to fail at this sometimes. Sometimes you can be frustrated too. But the more you can step into the void and help her, I'm telling you, the payback on the other end of it is going to be unbelievable, because a man who dedicates himself to a woman in this time will reap the benefits for the rest of his life.
That's exactly right.
If you stand there with her and you make sure when she's tired, you help her to make sure she gets more rest. That means getting up in the middle of the night. That means whatever it means. She has a weird craving at 2 a.m. You run to the store and get that craving met. I'm telling you, this woman that is then producing something that's part of you, but she carries it in her body. Big difference, friends. She will honor you the rest of your days of your life.
That she will. Because you stepped in at a time when she needed your support and needed you to be that rock for her.
It's when she's the most vulnerable.
It is. That is a great way of putting it, too.
Of course it is.
Yeah.
So there is fear with that, and there's vulnerability, both physically and mentally and emotionally.
Everything. She's feeling every bit of it.
And if you're meeting those needs in that time, she will dedicate herself to you forever. Yeah. I'm here to tell you that is the absolute truth.
And you know, the simplicity.
And we didn't succeed at that all the time, buddy.
The simplicity of it is, it's just showing up. I mean, that's literally your job, is just simply to show up.
Boy, you're going to find that consistency throughout everything I have written. Mm-hmm. It's simply showing up. We're going to tell you various ways on how to show up.
And when you're there,
this podcast.
But it's showing up. That's it.
Just get there, and then be there when you're there.
Yeah. Be present, be available.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to go through these stages, and then
Please.
Maybe you can interject periodically as you come up to things. So the stages, as defined by the Cleveland Clinic, birth to 18 months. Guys, this is mom's time. This baby is still likely 100% dependent on her body. If she's breastfeeding, if she's not, even then it's absorbing like her essence or something too. There is other effects that happen that her touch is the only thing that can bring that for this baby child. God made that baby that way.
Well, that's why immediately when the baby comes out, one of the very first things they do is they
put it in the mom's arms.
Put him in the mom's arms, lay on the mom's chest.
Heartbeat.
Yeah,
because it's the heartbeat it's familiar with.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what can you do during these first 0 to 18 months? By the way, I'm going to posit that it's not birth to 18 months. Like Cleveland says, that's fine. That is where the baby's outside of her body and you can actually hold the bloody thing, right? But I'm even saying prior to this, in gestation, you're going to need to be doing a lot of these things that we're about to mention. Cook, clean, let her nap when she's tired. Get up in the middle of the night if you can. If it's not a feeding emergency, if it's a diaper change, make that happen. Step into that place. Do the laundry. Do the dishes. Give her, once this baby is out, when you're able to, give her a coffee break with a girlfriend.
I think that's a big piece of it.
Let her get out of the bloody house sometimes and go spend some times with some other adult humans. Because she's getting literally her life energy is being sucked from her body for a long period of time. I hate to sound overly sympathetic, but guys, sit and wander your mind on the miracle that is birth of another human, and then get back to me on if I'm being too lenient.
Have you ever seen those videos of guys that get hooked up to those stimulus things?
No.
That makes them feel like they're having a contraction.
No.
And watch these grown men just like stage one of a contraction and watch them on the ground flailing and just in utter pain. And you're like, that woman is getting ready to go through 10 times what you just went through. And we are so weak. They are so strong.
Oh, no, I don't watch those videos. I don't ever want to watch those videos. I'm already sympathetic enough, I think. I hope.
It sounds
and
like
by the way, I'm too old for babies anymore. So here we go.
That's why I got grandbabies now, man.
Finally, don't take things personal. how do you go about not taking things personal? Again, these hormones that she has are probably running a little rampant. By the way, if you're observing her and you're being a student of her, there are such things as like postpartum depression. This is your role, is to step into that place. If you see her struggling, you need to be able to identify that. You can't do that from a distance. You have to be a daily checking in kind of guy.
But that's you being present to know when her emotions change
Absolutely.
and how her personality starts to change, and then you step
Some
in.
of that'll happen no matter what, because that hormonal imbalance.
Yeah.
But if you are there, again, if you are there and you are present and you are active and you are open and not being constantly feeling like you're personally attacked by these whims of her personality through this little period of time, you will be able to see what's going on. You'll be able to track it, and you'll be able to confront it if you should find yourself in such a place.
Yeah, agreed with you on that. This is the hard. I think, guys, we take personal when women are going through hormonal changes, especially when it comes to pregnancy. Like, we're being attacked for something that
We
we're
don't
doing.
understand it.
We don't, and
It's
you'll never.
very hard to understand. You're saying like these guys have to put diodes and stuff on their body to have electrical current put through it. This woman naturally is going through it because it's just part of her existence here.
That's exactly right.
It's very hard for our minds to, to bridge that gap between the reality of something, and we think we can relate to it in these various ways, but we can't. So it's confusing. And again, if we feel like we already discussed this in our anger podcast, which is anger is generally the root of what?
It's a secondary emotion.
Of what?
Fear.
Bingo. And the fear comes from I'm insufficient.
Yes. So just as a warning to you, when that happens, it's not a personal attack on you. Don't take it personally. She's scared.
How do you fortify yourself against that then?
Yeah, the way you fortify yourself against that, the best way is to be around some guys who have gone through it before and have conversations with
Once
them
again,
about
that
experience.
mentorship.
It is, because, again, we've done this terribly wrong many occasions.
Sure.
Some stuff we've done right.
Yes.
But our goal is to say, hey, when that comes up, here's what to watch out for. Here's how to handle that.
So when she is still pregnant, guys, go to some of these Lamaze classes and learn what that's all about. And there's going to be other men and women there that are going through the same thing. And you can start chatting with them, and you can be involved from that end. And you can start knowing what to expect then. Oh, this is kind of what this is going to look like. And then you can be a participant as the action starts to unfold. And then secondarily, get yourself involved in some groups after this child is born that might fit along the same age range as your child.
Yeah.
And again, like you said, if you're not plugged into a church, get plugged into a church. Period. There's going to be at our church, we have an abundance of young kids. God, every single time they do what do they call it? It's not a christening.
It's a child.
That's that Lutheran side christening. It's
Wow.
not what it is.
Jeez,
They do
Louise.
like baptism. It's not baptism.
It's not
either,
even
'cause baptism's
baptism.
what
It's
you
just
do
like
later.
a recognition of children that are in the church, and
Sure.
then they basically pray for the families and
offer the church's assistance in
That
any
they
way
do.
they can in raising the child up.
Yep.
And get yourself involved in that. Then you're going to meet a bunch of other people at local church to you. Or if you're near us, get to our church, Grace. It's a great church. It's in Altamont Springs. That's one we go to. It's fantastic. Come check us out. You get involved in those groups, and you're going to be able to better see what other people are doing, have some accountability partners, and then also be able to kind of like bounce ideas. You ever felt this way, man? And the guy go, oh my God, I felt that on Friday. And you're like, oh my goodness, okay, I'm not alone. Once
You're
again,
not
which
alone.
we're always trying to pitch out. Alone is that place where danger resides for men.
And it's super important that as you go through this early childhood stage is that you don't make yourself alone. Make sure that you're being around other guys as well, because you
For
can
sure.
start to think some pretty wild thoughts if you're left to your own
Well,
recognition.
there's going to be a lot of things. For a period of time, there's no sex in the house anymore. So for men, that's difficult for us. That's a stage, by the way. And it's going to happen. It happens when you're young, which is confusing too. Your body's going, hey, I'm still young and excitable. And now this woman who
Doctors say about 6 weeks, maybe 8 weeks, sometimes longer.
this can be a while. And ladies on the other end can deal with various things too, like, again, I said it before, but like postpartum depressions and things like that can kick in. So then it can drag this period of time on longer, 6 to 8 weeks, whatever it is. I don't know. You look it up, whatever they're saying these days. It's that amount of time that you as a man have to be able to be fortified in yourself to continue to honor this woman and be patient. And it's very difficult. This is going to be one of the greater tests of your life.
Mm-hmm.
Is this moment right after the birth and until this period of time when things kind of feel like they're getting back on track again.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be very important. And again, if you honor her this period of time, men, she will honor you the rest of your bloody life. So for 6 measly weeks, you can find yourself with someone that you already love, that you've already committed yourself to in one form or another. Hopefully it's marriage. And in that sense, she will honor you the rest of your bloody life after a 6-week commitment. It's a pretty good trade-off, friend.
It is, but a lot of guys will go through an experience like this, and when the baby's small like that, especially, they're like, well, what can I even do? Like, why is it valuable that I'm even there?
What can they do?
So, like you just talked about, being there, being up in the middle of the night when the baby starts crying and going in.
You can support mom.
Go sit in the room with that baby and rock that baby.
Yeah.
It is a time for you to connect. They've actually found that fathers being present in the home during this. So, first of all, there's 18.3 million fatherless homes right now. 25% of all kids are in fatherless homes. Of that, 80% of that is homes where the kids are raised by the mom and not by the dad.
Mm-hmm.
And so we see that a lot. And so what is happening with that? Well, when I'm present as the father, they find it helps with cognitive development very early on. Emotional development is a huge piece of it. When they hear a father's voice and they feel they have 2 different adults that are being part of the interaction of them, even at a small age, you don't see it, but that baby is feeling that. Stress reduction is another piece for babies as well, is that they feel less stress when there's two parents in the home.
That makes complete sense, doesn't it?
It does. And it's as simple as you going and picking that child up, holding that child next to you and rocking and loving on that child. And then
it hears your heartbeat.
It hears your voice.
Everything about that just makes complete sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
Just cognizantly, logically in my brain, my presence there is already helping, pin that child to this individual.
Yeah.
It makes, keep going, please.
But not most, I mean, I didn't look this, but, a big percentage of women breastfeed. And so there's nothing you can do for that part of it, but it's everything else you can do outside of that is like when you're home, pick that baby up and hold that baby. Like you spending time holding that child is so important in the development of that child. Just holding it. That's it. Speaking to it so it hears your voice.
Mm-hmm.
Babies in those first months, their brain development is rapid. And so even though they're not speaking to you yet, they can very quickly recognize who you are.
They'll look in your direction.
And it creates security for them. That's a big piece for them as well.
Sure.
This is the protection part. When we were talking about how do we break up these stages, we were kind of looking at, the younger stages as a father especially is this, they're learning protection.
Mm.
As we get in the next stage, we'll talk more discipline, and then after that, it becomes more coaching than anything else.
Okay.
But this protection piece is very important right at the very beginning, and it's all the way we develop that is just time. That's it.
Sure. Ready to move on to the next little piece here?
Yeah.
So the next piece I have is 18 months to 3-year-olds. Cleveland Clinic says this is the time of game playing with other children, and doing some of the first eye-to-eye contact where they're identifying. So what you're talking about here, being able to recognize a sound and recognize who it is and where it's coming from and why it's coming from that direction. What can you do in those moments? Well, you can go ahead and get eye-to-eye with the kid. And, it's funny, it's been a long time since I had a baby that's mine. But my nieces aren't very old. Well, they're not very old in my calendar. When they were babies, both of them, I was around them. And I'm telling you, everybody laughs at me, but they love Uncle Johnny. Why? But I get on the ground with these kids. I'm always, wherever their face is, I put my face right down by them. So when they were still crawling, I crawled with them. I roll around with them on the floor. I love doing that. It just fills my heart with joy. Now let's make something clear. I'm not waking up in the middle of the night to pick up these babies. So I got a lot of spare energy, dads and moms. I got a lot of spare energy to roll around with them, but I also want to be a component. I want to be a helper. I want to help your family. I wanted to help my brother-in-law and his wife. I wanted to help their family. And we did that quite a bit because we want those girls to know that we care too. Again, that's kind of that community that we're that we're talking
Takes a
about
village.
here. But it's like getting down at their eye level. Some of the first words happen in this. Well, all the first words happen in 18 to 3 years if you have a healthy child. So their first words are, generally speaking, mama and papa, or mama, dada, or something to that effect. Dada, where are you?
Yeah.
You have to be there for you to be a part of those first words. And this, now we're talking 18 months to 3 years. Have them see your face, but not just see your face, but have them see your face engaged with them. They're important.
Yeah.
How do you show importance? Well, if you were to be speaking to another adult and you thought that adult was important to you, you face them, you give them your attention. Granted, they're not kicking out super interesting stuff at 18 months to 3 years. It's pretty fascinating, though, frankly, because they'll start taking their first steps and stuff, too. Amazing stuff happens in that time, and you have to be around to even see that they happen.
Yeah. My grandkids, you forget about these things as, when your kids are older, but, having grandkids now, watching them go through that, it's amazing kind of once kids hit that 3-year-old mark, I finally feel like I can have a conversation with that child. But what happens in this 18-month to 3-year-old mark, kids start, what did they learn from a father? Social skills and being able to navigate socially, even in those younger ages.
Sure.
Proper masculine development. What does a man look like, and how is a man supposed to act and respond around them?
Okay.
Boundaries. This is a big one for the smaller kids.
This is the
especially.
discipline.
This is, I think, creating boundaries before you move into discipline. Discipline would be the next piece of this.
Okay.
I think by 3, there is some disciplining, obviously, that's going to be happening there, but it's going to look very different.
But it's always navigated around the boundaries that have already been set.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, you're right. Okay.
And so we start creating this fencing. We start creating these boundaries for our kids at that age.
Sure.
It's amazing even now. You know this with kids. My wife can say something, and then I walk in the room with that voice, and it's just like it's a call to attention, right?
Yeah.
But the reason why it's that way is it's more respect than it is fear, because you can get a long way with kids with fear, and there's always going to be a part of that with discipline where I'm scared of dad, but I'm scared of dad not because he's going to hurt me, but because I know he's going to discipline me.
Well, because I respect my dad so much, and I don't want to disappoint him, and I don't want to be living below his standards for me. And my dad has done such a good job of setting those standards that when I fall below them and he's disappointed, it hurts me.
Yeah. And then a big one, they found problem-solving skills.
Oh.
Taught by fathers more than they are by mothers in this age group.
Yeah. So I kind of have that falling into the 3 to 5.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else for 18 to 3? Okay, cool. So 3 to 5 years old, this is where I really start falling into that. And this is where I think some of those major developments happen with kids. And this is Cleveland Clinic states that. This is where kids start developing their likes versus dislikes. Like this, don't like that. And start really identifying those components of what will then become part of the structure of who they are later in life. They learn to play on their own. So they'll start, initially they need you around and they're always trying to like get you engaged. But once they hit this 3 to 5, they'll start separating themselves and be in a room.
Yeah.
And they'll just be playing.
That's the development of social skills, right?
Bingo.
That's the big part of that.
It's part of this, yes. Yeah. But it's also independent skills. So they're no longer needing you to be right in their presence constantly. They're trying to gain this initial independence part. So they'll play on their own. They'll be within sight line of you usually, especially at 3. There's mom right over there in the kitchen and I'm in the living room and I can see her, but they'll occupy themselves on their own and be comfortable doing that. And you should be hoping so and be flourishing that. Mm-hmm. You don't want to helicopter your child because we've seen where that leads to. It's very important time for social skill development. Bingo. You're totally right there. I was listening to Jordan Peterson was on the Andrew Huberman podcast, and it was like a 4-hour podcast, phenomenal. And there's a period of time where they talk about bad behaviors from kids and when like early development of these bad behaviors can become in adulthood psychopathy is like hitting and biting and selfish behavior and how and shoving and how important it is to squash that right away, because like a child that goes on to bite after the age of 4 years old is 10 times more likely to be a socio or psychopath when they get older. So
Interesting.
when they see kids biting at 6 and 8 years old, it's a big, big, big problem, because nobody does that. Unless you're in a life or death situation, nobody's biting anybody else. That's not how you react. Now, hitting can go on further than that, but biting specifically beyond the age of 4 is a big, big sign of like there is a major problem with this kid's cognitive development. And in fact, they speak about how, you should get somebody professionally involved at that point in time at 4. So that's how critical some of these early learned behaviors are. And then the setting up the boundaries, as you said. And then if a child continues to doing it, then we're going to talk about discipline. But even hitting and these selfish behaviors, which hitting usually is, it's like, this is what I'm playing with and somebody else wants to come share with you maybe. And rather than trying to find a comparable way for you both to have time or share this toy, you lash out physically.
This is where you find out real quick that every child has a sin nature.
Oh gosh, it's a great point.
Because the thing you have to remember, like you could do all this stuff right. Like you train up the child in the way they should go.
Sure.
Right? And they're still going to be kids. They're still going to act a fool. They're still going to act crazy, no matter how good of a parent you are. So there is a part where you can just take a breath and just relax that,
And each kid has like a different heart. You've got how many kids? 4 kids?
I've got 4 kids.
I got 2 kids. They're both totally different.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
All 4 of my kids are very different.
Completely different people.
Had to parent them very different. Had to discipline them very different. Everything's very different.
I have so many brothers and sisters. There was 6 of us in the house. Everybody, my moms would say this. I interviewed her a while back. She talks about it. Everybody's completely different in our household in different ways and in beautiful ways, and then in dangerous ways sometimes too, especially when we were younger. We all brought something else to the table, so you have to be able to adapt to whatever each child's bringing and be able to, and that's where you can kind of get this confusion, and it's where you need to give yourself some grace sometimes.
That's it. That's so important.
Is that you're not going to do this right. It's a good time for us to say that again. You're not going to do this right all the time. You're going to get frustrated sometimes. Some kids in the family might feel like, if you have multiple kids, if you're blessed with multiple kids, that, hey, you treat this person differently than you treat me. And it's rather than becoming upset and angry because you feel like where's that root? What's the root of that anger or frustration? Rather than letting that affect you that way, think of why I treat them differently and explain it to your child. At any age, it never hurts for you to explain things, by the way, to a kid, even if they're small. They're probably not going to get it. It can't be the only thing you do is try to like philosophize with a 2-year-old. That's nonsense. But you can still discuss things with kids. You can tell kids why you're thinking things and hope that they get whatever they get, but then also make sure that you're making the standard known in whatever ways need be to keep them in line and keep them on the path. Consistency. Yeah.
That's the biggest part of it.
Correct. So what can we do in that time to be active in a kid's life? Again, this is the 3 to 5. We can be present. I'm going to say that every single time. Be present. What does that look like? Read them books. Teach them that they matter to you. Again, that's going to be getting down on their level. So if they have, like with my nieces, I thought of this specifically when I was writing this. I'm the only one that does this. It's not to degrade anybody else. It's just because I just love this opportunity that God's given me with other little kids, and especially girls. I have 2 sons. So it's nice to have 2 little girls that like me too. Makes me feel good. And they'll bring me their pictures that they draw. And I get excited. What is this? Not, hey, is that a goat? I don't even say that. I go, what do you got here? And I let them explain it to me, because it like paints this picture of what's in their head. And I go, oh my gosh, what's he doing? And then they'll tell this big story because they get fired up about it, man. And they're fired, and they think Jonny is the coolest guy on the planet. And I told you this before I got honored by one of them recently. These are young girls that don't understand how much something like this would mean to me. But when they wanted 2 different kinds of ice cream, one of them said, I want strawberry. The other one said, I wanted chocolate. And the other one goes, Uncle Jonny will get us both. And my wife goes, why you say that? And she goes, he'd do anything for us.
It's the best.
You darn right I would. I went and got strawberry and chocolate. I don't care. So you get them
Something
hyped up on sugar and send them back to their parents. I
right.
don't mind.
Something so simple though that it was something so big to them, right? That's
Yeah.
that you being present part.
That's the
And
only
that's
way
what
that this manifests.
That's right. That's all that means. Like you being present is just like you being available
Yes.
and being aware of what they're interested in and what they like. Because when I'm
sure.
showing interest in that, that's when they're going to feel that connection. But I also get it. Like as a guy who had a job. I mean, you work all day, you come home, you're tired, and sometimes the last thing you want to do is get on the floor with that kid and ask them about their day. But it's the most important thing you can do for that kid is in their development and their security is for you to. You chose to have this kid. That kid did not choose to have itself. So spend some time with them, man. I think as I think back to my raising my kids when they were little, I was an over-the-road salesman, so I was gone 5 days a week. It's part of the reason why we moved from Nebraska to Florida is so that I could be home every single night. But when I lived in Nebraska when my kids were small, and so I was gone 5 days a week, and I'd come home on the weekends, and I would be exhausted, and I'd have to get my mind ready to go back out on the road and work all week the next week again,
Sure.
man. So I missed so much of those years of just being on the floor and hanging out with my kids, man.
The two oldest, specifically.
My two youngest ones.
Oh, the two youngest.
Yeah. So I adopted two kids. My wife, her kids were 4 and 2 when I came around. And even then, they were probably, they would have been 5 and 7 when we got married. And so even in those younger years of their development, I wasn't around when they were babies for those years of it. So when we had our two kids together, I was around for those baby years, but I traveled during a lot of those years.
Okay.
So I missed a lot of that. And I think that's probably my greatest regret as a dad. If I could go back and do that all over again, it was when I was there just to be present, and have that time with my kids.
Well, and that's why we're pitching this to you in the way that we do is
Yep.
because we'd rather you don't have the same regrets that we do. I've spoken about this before and without getting into great detail. I had a severe alcohol problem. And so much as that I wasn't exactly a bad roll on the floor dad. I loved playing with my little son, Sebastian, when he was just a baby. I had him through the age of 5. And then his mom moved away because our relationship had become so toxic. She moved away and she took him at that point in time. And then I'd only see him a couple of times a year. I lived far away. I lived in Oregon. They lived in Minnesota. And I went from there to here. So that's where my life took me so that I could get sober and then become a better dad. And now we have a relationship as he's an adult. It started, and I'll say this too, I had an amazing woman that was in my life shortly after they moved away. And it was right when I probably would have given up because it was hard. It was very, very hard to have them moved away and have him moved away and then still try to be a dad somehow. Like, what did that look like? There wasn't video phone. We didn't have FaceTime. FaceTime wasn't invented yet. It's early 2000s, homie. And she encouraged me. She said, you need to always, every single day, still reach out to him no matter what. No matter what. She goes, call him every day. And then his mom was frustrated with me at the time. And she wouldn't let him take my calls. So I started writing him letters. And I'd handwrite him letters and send those off. And then I convinced her to let me send him a phone. So then I sent him a phone and I would call him on the phone I sent him. And I never stopped. I'd always read him a book. I'd call him every night at the same time, right before bedtime. And I'd read him a story and he would go to sleep to that. And he'd fall asleep consistently to me reading these stories. I'd read about a chapter of a book that was a kid's book, like Perseus. I forget what those books were called, but specifically that was they were about the Greek gods. Fun books. But I wasn't able to do a lot of these things. Now, my stepson, I came into his life when he was 3. So it's kind of like I got to relive some of that stuff, but he wasn't a full baby when I came in. He was already at that stage. And now I've had him full time. His dad does take him from time to time. But we have him full time. My wife and I, it's her son. And that's kind of filled in that other gap of time in between when I wasn't full time Sebastian's dad. I get to kind of make up some of that time. Now it sounds to me to kind of correlate this to your story is now that you have grandbabies, boy, you sure have them quite a bit and you get down on the ground with them and face to face.
Do things very, very differently. But being a grandfather, you get the wisdom of looking back at your life of what you did wrong, and it's kind of like it's this do-over.
It's another opportunity.
It is.
So it's not even a do-over. It's just a second opportunity for you to fill in places that you didn't.
But now at this side, the big thing, if you're a young dad, that I could try to, if I give you one little piece of wisdom, it's patience. That's the difference of being a grandfather versus being a father. Because when you're in fatherhood, you're in like survival mode. It's like, I'm trying to make sure this kid doesn't die. I'm trying to provide for them. I'm trying to balance a relationship with the mother. I'm trying to hold the fort down. So you have a lot of pressure on you.
Yeah.
You really do. And so it's easy underneath that pressure to get impatient, to not take opportunities and time to do this. And now at this side of things, I'm not in survival mode anymore. Money's different now, and patient level is different. You could really enjoy those times with the grandbabies that you didn't as a father. And so do the best as you can just to try to slow things down, because you hear this from dads all the time, from parents. It goes so fast, and it does. It does. There's no other way to explain it unless you've gone through it before. That my daughter will be 29 this year. What?
I know. It's bananas. My son is 23. Huh?
My youngest is graduating high school in 4 months.
So nuts.
Huh?
I know.
And I remember just holding him, and so it goes real fast. So try to be patient.
And if any of this right now that we're talking about is touching a nerve, it's not too late. Re-engage right now.
Thank you for saying that.
Re-engage this moment.
Yeah.
Get to doing it tonight. If you're at work and you hear this,
it's never too late to start.
Do it this weekend. Start setting up some plans that put your face in front of their face in a manner that says you matter, and I'm interested in you.
It's good.
And invite them. Here's another thing you can do at the age of 3 to 5. I wanted to make this clear because this kind of ties into your last thing. Invite them into your likes. My brother, Sean, he is one of the coolest dads of all time. I knew he was going to be a great dad, and he just is this excellent dad. He has always invested his time with his kids doing their things, but also inviting them into his things. He likes to fish. One of his kids is an excellent fisherman. He has a YouTube channel that's very successful. Yeah. And he sells clothing and stuff on it. It's awesome. I'll get something and wear it in here. And then his other son, my brother and I both played hockey. Sean and I both played hockey. And his other son plays hockey at a way better than him and I ever were. Why? Because he as a dad is able to he sees the necessity, and he has always seen the necessity for him to play a very active role. Our dad was like you. He's a hardworking man who was taking a family out of the very depths of poverty and raising them up into the middle class. That takes a lot of time and effort. And unfortunately, he didn't get to spend as much time with us as I'm sure he would have liked to. Sean took that, starting off in middle class, and really accelerated and said, I'm going to invest this time in my kids. And both of them are stupendous individuals who are very successful already at very young ages. I mean, I'm talking like 12 and 14 at their individual tasks. The 14-year-old being the fisherman, and the 12-year-old being the hockey player. I mean, unbelievably good hockey player. So much better than my brother and I. We'll watch our games and he's constantly scoring goals. I'm like, is that your kid again? I'd score like 2 goals a season. I played defense, but like nonetheless, this kid's constantly putting them in the net. It's phenomenal. Good job, Thomas and Jacob.
That's fun.
Shout out.
That's fun.
Yeah.
But the point you're making, that guys,
he invited them into his stuff.
That's so good to do.
I invite my son Izzy, my youngest. I like to woodwork. So I bought him like this little, my first wood shop set. And he comes out, I invite him out, and he fiddles with some things and smashes some nails into some boards, especially when he was younger. And while I'm working on larger projects that I'm actually doing. So even at my shop that I currently have, his little stuff is there, and he'll come out and tinker, or I'll invite him out. Hey, I got to build this thing and I need your help, buddy. I need somebody to hold this thing up, and here's how this works. And you're going to do this piece here, and then you're going to drive the quad over, because now he's, 13 years old. He can drive the quad. So he hops on there. Are you sure about this? Dad, is this cool? That thing is high powered and loud and awesome. It looks like a Jeep.
Yeah,
it's
that's
fun.
fun. It is fun. I think there's some wisdom to that, inviting them into what you
have to.
Yeah.
You have to. Listen, we talked about this last week. he has witnessed us, our youngest, always, every morning, we open the Bible first, both mom and I. It's what we do. It's how we start our day. So we're doing that. And now what do? We get him a Bible. He opens the Bible first thing in the morning. He doesn't need any prompting. Why? It's just what older people do, I guess, is all he thinks.
Train up a child in the way he should go.
There we go.
That you're at that age now where this is now your role.
That's exactly right.
Especially as we enter this 5 to 12 range.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's even more so now. This is the stage of life where discipline becomes a very critical part of what we do and how we discipline, the mode of discipline, and then understanding every kid needs to be disciplined differently. I've got 3 sons. My oldest son, I could have thrown that kid in a chokehold. I didn't, but I could have thrown that kid in a chokehold.
What? Rodney could have got a chokehold?
And he would have just stared at me like...
Never would have guessed it.
And he would look at me like, that's all you got?
I know. He totally would.
He totally would.
I have a brother like that, so yeah.
My middle son, Elijah, I probably had to spank him a handful of times.
Sure.
My 18-year-old, I've never spanked him in his whole entire life. Not once. All I had to do was look at that boy.
Yeah.
In fact, the very first time he got grounded his whole life was at 17. He watched his older 2 brothers and was like, I'm going to take a different path.
And they're all different. That's again, just to underline our
different.
Initial point is each kid's going to be different. God might bless you with the easiest kid in the world. He might bless you with a very difficult child, or it might be somewhere in between. You could have different kids for different times. I mean, it's so hard to say.
Discipline is a challenging part because the Bible says this in Proverbs 13:24. It says, whoever spares the rod hates their children. But the one who loves their children is careful to discipline them. And so the Bible is...
I like that it says careful, too.
That's the second part of that.
It's so key.
Yeah, it's be careful, right?
What does it
Don't
look like?
spare the rod, meaning it's okay to spank your child.
Discipline's going to look different at different stages of life. I remember a specific time, I can't tell you if I was 15 or 16, maybe even younger than that, maybe it was 13, where a spanking or a swat or any of that stuff was nonsense. My dad ain't going to come in the room and like spank a full-grown kid.
Mm-hmm.
No.
That's why that 5 to 12 range is when that's going to be happening.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
So that's when the boundaries are really going to be developed, age 5 to 12.
And that's when discipline's probably at its most necessity to make sure they're staying within whatever bounds you've set.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to get into this 5 to 12. What comes with 5 to 12? Cleveland Clinic says problem-solving skills.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we put them into school, is so they can start learning some of that. Self-confidence. Self-confidence. Sons, again, we talked about this last week, so I'm repeating myself. Sons are saying, am I enough?
Mm-hmm.
Daughters are saying, am I lovely? That's from John Eldridge, by the way. So this is your opportunity to develop those close relationships, to say, you are those things, my child, but actually you're so much more. And I'm going to shepherd you. I'm going to have this vision for you. We spoke about that. This vision for you that's going to always have greater expectations than probably what you're setting. It's not to say that you're living below my standards ever. It's to say, I love you. I'm going to help you, but I see you as better than even you see yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I see your full potential.
Yeah, that's a beautiful part of that. That if there's this other verse I want to read that kind of goes along with this,
Right.
Ephesians 6:4, and it says, "Fathers, do not exasperate your children. Instead, bring them up in the training and instruction of the Lord." This word exasperate means to irritate or frustrate intensely. And so there's a backside to discipline that if not done correctly, you can frustrate them and irritate them. That's why I think that proverb, you brought it up, it said the word careful, right? And so how do I figure out how to discipline my child to where it's effective and I can steer them in the correct direction versus to where I make it so that it goes against the grain of what discipline is really designed to do, where they just become fearful of me and they never want to be around me because they're always worried about the heavy hand of dad.
Oh gosh, yeah. They fear your dad all the time.
Mm-hmm.
That does not say, I am here, I will listen, and I will respond.
Right.
It doesn't say that at all.
You have a choice. You can rule with an iron fist, and it'll work for a while, or you can rule them with love, where it'll work for eternity.
Fathers, who do you want your child, this little human, to be?
Mm-hmm.
Who do you want them to be? Do you want them to be liked by others? Do you want them to be respected? Do you want them to be funny and fun and happy? How do you want them to be? You have a defining role on the outcome of that.
Their self-esteem, you just said that a moment ago, is one of the biggest roles we
How
have as a father, is develop that self-confidence in them.
and you do that through showing them how a man is supposed to be. So how's a man supposed to treat a woman? You had a great explanation of how that shows a daughter who she wants her husband to be, your daughter who she wants her husband to be, is by modeling how you treat your wife.
That's right.
And how you act in situations when your child is around is how they're going to then act. They're little mimic machines. So they see dad, and dad's losing his cool and he's freaking out all the time. They're going to assume that that's what you do.
I'm angry because my dad was angry. I have a temper because my dad had a temper, right? So we get to start to use these arguments of I am the way I am. Why? Usually it's not because of the mom. It's because of how the father acted. That's that's the value of our role inside that home, is to be emulating and modeling all the time.
So who do you want this kid to be? Well, we talked about it just a minute ago. You can, as they're early, so up until about 5 years, you're inviting them into your things, but then they are going to start expressing their own individuality in this 5 to 12. Some of that's going to start happening. Start figuring out like, oh, I kind of like this, kind of like that. Get involved in what they're into. Are they into music? Well, show interest in that. Hey, what are you working on there? You like to play piano, huh? Or drums or guitar? Let's get you some lessons, and I'll take you to them. And I'm going to ask you about how's those lessons going? Will you play me something? Or if they like sports, that's when you can get outside and toss the ball around with them.
Or
go ahead.
Maybe you are an athlete and your kid is not one.
Oh, you have to be willing to accept that that might be the case.
Yeah, maybe they aren't just like you. Maybe they don't have the same athletic prowess that you had, and you have to not force that on them.
Again, you have to find their interests. They are going to start showing their interests. They will manifest. You have to be attentive. What are they into? Okay, they're into this thing. They're into music. I see that they have a proclivity towards that. It's not the sports thing I wanted, but I'm here to tell you, as a guy that played sports and likes music, in your brain, the outcome of them is the same kind of good feeling. And there's a lot of hard work that goes into music, and there's a lot of hard work that goes into sports. If they like schoolwork, boy, one of them shows a lot of proclivity towards the STEM field, science and math and stuff. They're good at math. Couldn't be more proud. Get involved in that. Hey, I don't know anything about math, son or daughter, but boy, I'm sure glad you're into it. Can I get you maybe some more lessons on that? Maybe get a tutor that is smart on that stuff, or you get trained up on your own, or some way that puts you, but be in proximity to it and be interested. Get, again, that face level. Hey, kid, I love you so much. I think you're awesome. How can I involve you in this? How can I be involved in your thing now?
Yeah, and if they're not into what you're into, as a father, you can do harm to their self-esteem very quickly.
You have to let them know they're worth your time.
Yeah, and that what they're interested in matters, and that they don't have to be interested in what you're interested in. I think so many dads wear it as a badge of honor if their kids are the good athlete. They have these expectations that my kid's going to be the star player, and I get to be the dad on the sidelines that gets to be, hey, that's my kid out there. And what if he's not? So what? We look at the world standards of like what is a good father, and the world standards is you got the stud athlete, you got the guy who's getting all the girls, you have the kid who's successful, and that's not God's standards at all. And so you have to make that decision very early on, that if I want this human being to be a follower of Christ that's loved by God, then I'm going to love them right where they're at, whatever they're interested in. I'm going to be involved in that and build them up to be successful, because once they get out of high school, let's be honest, very small amount of kids even go on to play sports in college, and even smaller amount go in to become professionals after that. So,
by the way, all of that is fleeting. It's short-lived. You're not one athlete played till he was 45. That's Tom Brady in football, at least.
One.
Hockey, one guy played beyond that slightly. They're still going to have something else they do in life. So nourish all of their interests at that point in time. And then, by the way, if they behave poorly, let them know when they're out of line. Let them know that you have higher expectations for them. Hey, I think you're more valuable than this. And I don't want people in society to think you're a fool. And you can tell them that. Step back into line. I think that you're more valuable than this, son or daughter. And this is below you. And don't be afraid to say that, especially at that age group, especially as they start getting into some cognizant age group. You don't always have to give them a swat.
Yeah.
Some of that kind of talk from a dad, especially if you've already set a good example, is going to hurt way more than any swat across the backside. I'm here to tell you for sure. As we kind of move our way into this last little section, 12 to 18-year-olds, this is where they start developing increased independence. They develop opinions, puberty, and sexuality. First things first. Andy gave some stats on suicide last week from the age of 12 to 18. They're staggering.
Staggering.
What do you remember the number?
I don't right offhand.
Fine. Tune into last week's episode, and we'll put it in the notes as well. Here's what I'm saying. Be nosy. This is your responsibility, and your duty is to know what your child is doing at these ages. These are wildly critical ages where they will be testing boundaries. And that's fine. They're supposed to, because they're trying to figure out where are the boundaries, especially as they move towards adulthood. It's your responsibility to show them where the boundaries are. And when they step beyond them, again, to restate, I think you're more valuable than this behavior would dictate. Step back into line.
Especially with boys, more than the challenging part about this age group, especially is with daughters, having a daughter. Because with boys, I have to worry about one boy. With daughters, you have to worry about all the boys.
Oh yeah.
And I've always told that my daughter right up front, like, just, you need to know this going into it. Men are dogs. And I have this conversation with her. Men are dogs. And because dogs can be trained, but men are dogs. And they really want one thing from you, especially at that teenage age. And they will do everything they can to talk you into it. And so you have to be strong, and you have to have your boundaries set up ahead of time, that how far I'm willing to go. And you have to teach this to your kids. This is the hard part about being a dad, is in these teenagers having sexual conversations. Not only with your sons, it's a little bit easier, but with your daughter, it's a little bit more crafted, the way that you have to go about it, because they need to know that dad is there as the protector. I'll never forget my daughter, when she was 16, had her boyfriend over to the house, and we had found them later on in their bedroom. And my wife had walked in, and
oh boy,
I had told this boy, I said, if you're at my house,
I will.
You're going to have respect for my daughter. And
can we take this axe with us next time?
He ran out the back door.
I bet he did.
I ran out the front door, and I grabbed that kid, and I had him up in the air, pinned up against the
Who you think you are?
tree. He never came back to my house again after
Shocking.
that. But setting those boundaries, but also what my daughter was able to see there as well, is that dad's not going to play around when it comes to protecting his little girl. And we have to set those boundaries, because kids will press those boundaries. I press those boundaries. What are we talking about here?
Of course.
This is part about being a teenager. Sometimes it's allowing kids to get around those boundaries and then letting them fail. I think this is the most challenging part about a dad with older kids, is watching your kids fail and letting them fail, because it's in those failures where they get to see what they're worth. Are they going to get back up and rise up again, or are they going to stay down?
Well, and if you're not living a hypocritical life, if you are setting a good example that has good results, they will see the forest from the trees. Kids aren't stupid. They're your kids. So they'll get it. They'll see you living appropriately. And when they live inappropriate and step outside of the bounds, and then they receive some sort of negative consequence because of it, they're going to go, gosh, dad was right.
Because guess what? When they get out of the house and they get into the real world, they're going to be faced with these choices.
You want them to already be prepared when they leave your house.
Of course you do.
So set good examples. By the way, let's say this piece too. 12 to 18 years old. At this point in time, if you haven't already, we hadn't. And that's for specific reasons I already laid out before. But your child should now be reading the Bible too. You're a parent that reads the Bible, right? Your child should be reading the Bible as well. You should get them one, get a teen one, get one that's age appropriate
Read
to
it
them.
with them.
And talk about it. Dialogue it. Not just, hey, I'm going to read. Hey, let's read initially, or they might want to read on their own. Fine too. But then dialogue it. Hey, what'd you read today? Oh, you read Luke. What part? What were you reading about? What was happening at that point in time? Cool. Oh, what'd you think about it? Oh, great. Here's what I thought. All right. Good chatting with you, son or daughter. Love you. End of story. It doesn't have to be some big thing. We don't drag ours out into a 45-minute dialogue it's very brief. It's to show I'm engaged, I care about you, and this matters.
Mm-hmm.
This is something that very much matters. You've seen me doing it on my own, and now I'm taking other time and I'm doing it with you because you matter as well.
That's right.
So do that. Please do that. It's so important that you do that. God will start to speak to them at such a young age. Oh my goodness. They could potentially, and ideally with this, and maybe they won't specifically, but they could get a better start than we had, and that maybe even you, the viewer, had.
That's our hope.
That's the whole
Like,
point
I
of this.
tell my kids now, like, I always ask them, do you trust me?
Mm.
And they do now. They're growing up not so much because I didn't earn their trust.
Again, first off, you're a hypocrite.
I was a hypocrite. I was on the road for
Your
5
life is crazy.
and then I was out drunk for 10 years.
Ah.
So, my older 2 kids were out of the house when I got sober. And then my younger 2 kids were, thankfully my youngest, he was 9 years old. So he's got to see a very different dad than the older 2 kids did.
Sure.
But, now it's in the conversations I always ask them, do you trust me? And if yes, if you just listen, I have what's best for you. Like, I have some pitfalls I can steer you around if you just listen. And then I have to lay out a plan for them, but ultimately I have to let them go about that plan themselves. And I have to let them fall and let them fail. And there'll be time, and that I've always told my kids, as long as you're doing what you're supposed to do, I will never let you completely fail. But if I see you out there living a life you shouldn't, I'm going to let you fail to the bitter end of it because it's how you're going to learn.
You have to.
Mm-hmm.
So beyond 18, we'll talk about here in the future. Women, what can you do? Once again, women, encourage your husband. We've spoken about this already, but please, we watch you and you're our cue. Are we doing good? Yeah. All right. So don't be afraid to go around and go, grab your man, grab him by the shoulders and say, you're a good dad. When he does something that's appropriate and it's helpful and you think it's great, tell him you love him. Tell him, hey, I seen what you did there. We as men, that's that other side of it. We said at the beginning that men, if you dedicate yourself over this period of time, this woman will be dedicated to you. Women, I'm here to tell you as a man, when you give us these encouragements, it means more than anything in the world. And it keeps us going. It lets us know what we're doing is right, because we kind of just wing it, especially if our fathers weren't the perfect example, and no fathers are. Again, nobody's perfect besides Jesus. But when we do the right thing, please let us know. And
for guys, that's such a simple. Every guy needs an attaboy, and to have their wife go, "You're killing it."
Yeah,
it's everything. It's everything for us.
Oh, okay. That was the good thing.
Yeah.
We might not say that, but I'm here to tell you, I'm a man.
Men are dogs. Have you ever taken your dog and been like, "You're such a good boy"? What do they do? Their tails just wag and their just whole body's moving, right? Same thing.
Yeah. So please, ladies, you're our cue. We look for you. Yeah. And then when you cue us in, we go, great. And you can also cue us in when we're not right. Honey, that was a bit much.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And we'll be shepherded by that. That is your role. That's your Eve spot. And fathers, cherish your wives. It says that somewhere in the Bible.
Sure does, man.
Husbands, cherish your wives.
Cherish your wives. And the Bible also says for them older kids to honor your father and mother, and it will go well with you.
You're teaching the honor your wife is, you said this, and I'm just going to repeat it. You're teaching your children how a woman should be treated. And that's your job as the husband and as the father, is to say, here's how you should treat women, boys. Here's how you should treat women, girls. And if you set that standard correctly, watch them grow up and just be amazing adults.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll have these people that are adults that you like,
you want to
that you want to spend time with, that you love having over. I'm here to tell you that is absolutely the case. So again, we did not do this perfectly throughout our time, and you won't. But we think this is a pretty good start, and a pretty good guideline. If you have anything else, how can they let us know what they think?
UPD at updpodcast@gmail.com. You can
do that
email
again.
us at updpodcast@gmail.com. Jeez Louise.
Yeah, and they can hit us up on
Direct message us on social media.
what kind of social media we got.
You got Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube. Like, subscribe, share it. Man.
Please like and subscribe. And if you find something useful in any of these episodes, and you recognize somebody else that could use some of this data, please share it with them. Your goodwill means everything.
I love the comments people leave as well.
We have fantastic comments.
Yeah, man. Having people.
We sometimes get absurd comments too.
Sure do.
That's fun.
Yeah,
that lets you know you're making a little bit of a mark. I think if we weren't getting some that weren't all if they were all positive, I'd be like, all right, something's wrong here.
Yeah,
but sometimes it's funny to get negative stuff.
Yeah, it is. It is what it is. At least you know you're doing something right when people are leaving negative marks. I love that.
So you got any other ideas about this, good buddy?
Man, I think this is a good place to bring us into. An hour and 20 minutes just always goes so quickly. We try to keep it to an hour 20. We just feel like engagement at that point in time. We can maximize what we want to share without starting to lose the audience. So we try to keep our podcast right around that time frame.
The next episode is going to be on fatherhood as well. It's going to be about rebellion. And we're going to break down how to go about seeing that, receiving that, responding to it. And this is going to be a deep dive on what that looks like. And that's coming up next week.
Yeah, it's going to be
episode 40. Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you again for joining us. We are the Untrained Philosophical Discussionists. My name's Jonny Hanson. He's Andy Lamb. And we just want to pray that you have a deep and a fulfilling relationship with Jesus, and that he blesses you all the days of your life.
And all God's people said.
Well, he said amen.
They sure did, brother. Good to see you, man.
Good to see you too, pal. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Have a great day.